It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our speaker and alumnus of the year, Dave Penske, class of 1997. Accompanying Dave today are his wonderful wife, Tracy, and his parents, Frank and Patty. It is great to have Dave with us to celebrate the 17th anniversary of his graduation from Binghamton. Dave currently serves as the CEO of Zenith USA, a firm he joined in 1999. In 2013, Dave was named one of Advertising Age's 40 under 40. Dave Penske is a leader, innovator, and the force behind some of today's most notable and marketable advertisers. He has helped grow the company into one of the most creative agencies in the world, recognized as the #1 media agency in revenue by Advertising Age, and honored with gold Effies for innovative work on Verizon and Haagen-Dazs accounts. Previously, as president of Zenith, he led the Verizon account, increasing ad spend from $65 million to $2.5 billion. He was also responsible for building accounts with world-renowned firms such as Caesars Entertainment, JP Morgan Chase, and Toyota. A believer in corporate social responsibility, he helped launch Zenith Gives Back and Zenith's pro bono media campaign for Autism Speaks. Dave is actively engaged with Binghamton and is a member of the School of Management Metro Advisory Board. He spends a significant effort in mentoring students and was responsible for funding the Zenith Media Project. He has established 3 scholarships, including the Frank and Patty Penske Scholarship, David Penske Diversity Scholarship, and Dave Penske Scholarship. Most importantly, Dave is a wonderful friend and generous supporter of Binghamton University. Please join me in welcoming Dave Penske. In recognition of distinguished service to his profession, his community, and Binghamton University, we present Dave Penske this plaque in recognition of his Alumnus of the Year award.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Dean. It's been my pleasure. I will, first of all, congratulations to all of you. I remember this day. It was 17 years ago, as the Dean mentioned. Unbelievably, although you probably won't be surprised, as Binghamton residents the last few years, it snowed the day before my graduation, and I can't tell you how many snow days I've had going up here this year. I feel not much ever changes. My time here probably could have been spent better. I probably spent significantly more time in the school pub, which used to be in the bottom of the Union. I know it doesn't exist here anymore, but I spent there a lot more time there than in the library. I majored in history, and I think the biggest reason I majored in history, besides I really liked it, was that it took 9 classes to graduate, and that was a really important thing to me, graduating on time. So, also my parents felt it was a very important thing for me to graduate on time. But I took a class during my junior year that really changed quite a few things for me. I was required to read a book called Martin Eden by Jack London. I read it in basically 24 hours. It's a semi-autographical account of Jack London's life. And as soon as I read it, it was just something that really changed me. And when I think about it, I took a lot of, after taking a class about it, I read this quote that Jack London wrote about it, and I'll read this to you. And it's certainly, I have it actually in a plaque in my office. This is something that I've always kind of lived by, which is, don't loaf and invite inspiration. Light out after it with a club. And if you don't get it, you nonetheless get something that looks remarkably like it. Work all the time. Find out about this earth, this universe, this force and matter, and the spirit that glimmers up through force and matter. And by all this, I mean work for a philosophy of life. And throughout the novel, it's the character Martin Eden, which is really Jack London, and he's struggling to become a great writer. He's fighting these battles, and it's difficult, and he's broke, and he's doing different things, and he eventually becomes this very successful writer at the end of the book. And I realized that things weren't just going to happen for me, that when I graduated that it was not going to just be a simple thing of get a job and I could do that. But if I really wanted something, I needed to dedicate myself to it and really want to be successful. Luckily, that summer I had an internship, and I had an internship for 2 years at the same company, a political ad agency, and I absolutely loved it. It was something that I knew I wanted to do. I want to work in advertising. I just completely enjoyed my job every day. And I didn't really like politics, though, and I know there might be a politician coming up here soon, but there is I really liked the advertising part. The politics, it was a little rough for me, but it was something that I knew I had the right skills for, I knew I enjoyed it, and I wanted to do it. So I grew up watching my father's work ethic, and it's astounding. My father is still not retired, and works all the time, and growing up, it was just like a great thing to see. And one of the things I really liked about it, and it's different, I hope that your parents and even your friends can say this, he never complained about his job. And in fact, most times when you met him, if you asked him what he did, or a student or a friend, he's a lawyer, and he loved doing it. He'd be excited to tell you a story. And it seems very cliche as I say this, but I want to have that same feeling. I did not want to be in a job where I felt I had to go to work and it was, drag myself out of bed. I really wanted to do that. So in order to dedicate yourself to anything, you need to have a real love and ambition to be the very best at it. I use Jack London as an example. I'm sure Michael Jordan felt that way about basketball, the way my father felt about his legal career, and certainly that's the way I feel about my job. From my very first day at work, I knew I wanted to run the company. I knew that's something I wanted to do. I thrived in the pressure. I had an absolutely relentless work ethic. I worked 80 hours a week, but I never minded it. In fact, I really enjoyed spending the time. And I worked up through the ranks at Zenith. I had a couple other jobs between those. But at the age of 34, I became president of Zenith and a CEO 2 years later. It was a year before my goal date, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I think it's really important to have goals. And the first person I called was my father. He could not have been any happier, probably even more than I was. And what I did say, though, before I had this job, was if I was in charge, I would make changes. And the first thing I did with my leadership team was write a credo that reflected both my personal feelings about business and what I thought our company needed to do. It has 3 very simple pillars. The first one is business effectiveness, and I wanted to make sure our company stood for something that would deliver great results for our clients. We're known as the ROI agency, which is the return on investment. And I feel the same way I feel about my clients as I feel about what I do for my own company, is I want to give 100%, and that is something that what they're paying me for and what I've been instructed to do, I will dedicate myself to that just as I would to any of my clients. The second thing was talent and diversity. As a company, we must recruit great talent, train them, and have a workforce that closely mirrors the diversity of our country. I strive to keep learning myself. Is one of the main reasons I come up here, and I teach a couple times a year, either speaking or at a couple different classes. And I always take away a lot more from those experiences than I probably even give. And something I started at my own company was a trainee program where we brought students, and there's actually a few in the audience today that are joining my trainee program on June 24th. And we've actually hired quite a few over the last couple of years. And it's a way that we bring graduating students into our company. We give them a mentor on their day one. We give them 120 days of very documented training. We help them then select their future course in our company, where at the end of the 120 days, they rank their top 3 jobs, and we almost always, 95% plus of the time, we put them in one of their top 3 jobs for their future. The turnover at my company was very high. I became president in 2009. We had about 40% turnover of staff that was 1 to 3 years out of school. We're now down to about 11% turnover. So we made a dramatic change in how we really look at bringing talent into our business. And the third pillar of our credo is corporate responsibility. The dean mentioned it, and it's very, very important to me. to give back to my community, and to be a multiplier. And what I mean by be a multiplier is it's very easy, and I should say it's easy, it's always challenging to give money, and it's very great to give money back to your school and to give money back to different charities you might care about. But giving your time and giving your effort and your skill and really multiplying that effect. I saw Bill Clinton speak. It was almost about this time. It was at the beginning of 2010. He gives a great speech about being a multiplier. And I have an expertise in advertising, expertise in marketing, in using those skills to multiply the effects of the money I give or the time I give to a charity. And if I got the work ethic, my work ethic from my father, although my mother is certainly no slouch there either, I definitely got my charitable way of thinking from my mother. My mother worked most of her career in New York City public school systems as both a teacher and guidance counselor. And as my father would tell, it gave most of her salary back to students in forms of school trips, college application fees, and whatever she could. Watching my parents as they gave to charity was certainly a huge part of my upbringing and part of the reason I went such an important part of my career. My company has quite a few pro bono clients. We've donated over $80 million in free media to a variety of charities, including Autism Speaks, the United Way, and the Hispanic Scholarship Fund over the last 3 years. And doing that's been very rewarding for me, but also made me start thinking about my own path and how I got to where I am today. How could I give back? And Binghamton was really on the top of my list. I feel very strongly about state schools and getting education at a reasonable price. Also, Binghamton does not have the endowment of schools of similar ilk. So I feel, how can I really help? I went onto the Binghamton website and looked up who was in charge of marketing classes at the School of Management. I tried to figure it out. I've also helped the school with the website. I'm trying to give some advice. It's not that easy. I simply wrote an email that I want to help, volunteer both time and to give money to the school. I was passed around a little bit, and I was finally introduced to Lori Norell, who I think doesn't normally get people asking her. She leads the donations here that are actually trying to give. And we had a great first meeting. I committed to donating a few scholarships to Binghamton. One is my parents' name, as you heard before. To speaking at the school on a regular basis. I always say snow permitting. This year has been tough. Teaching a research class and hiring Binghamton students. Because one of the challenges when I met with the dean and Lori and Christina, that is, there was not that many opportunities for marketing students coming out of Binghamton. It was, I know there's a lot of accountants in the audience here, but from a marketing standpoint, it was very tough. So I committed, and since that first meeting was just a couple years ago, we've hired over 20 Binghamton SOM grads. We've donated $50,000 in research grants, and this year we'll have 3 students on full-time scholarships. So, thank you. So when the dean asked me to speak to you today, I was honored. I have just a few thoughts to leave you with today. To be successful, I would do the following. I'd ask for help and advice. People generally are really good and good at heart and want to help you. Just have to ask for it. Friends of my family gave me my first job, my first internship, and one of the main reasons I always want to pay it forward is I was given those opportunities. Be really ambitious. People often say that they're successful beyond their wildest dreams. I don't really believe it. I really believe that you have to have that dream and ambition from day one. I had that. I constantly set goals, and I tried to achieve them. Don't be afraid to fail. At least half the goals I've set have not been made yet, but I hope they will be someday. And work really hard for something you care about. It doesn't really matter what it is, but if you do this, you will be successful. You might hear this a lot, but I really believe I've seen it in my own career. And finally, give back to those people and places that got you here. It will be the most fulfilling thing you ever do. Thank you.